All right, now to an update we first told you about in the last half hour. A trial date is set for former President Donald Trump's federal election interference case.
Yeah, the former president's legal team wanted the trial to start in 2026, but D.C. District Judge Tanya Chutkan wasn't having that. She scheduled it to start next year on March 4th.
The judge, I think, largely was just not buying what the defense was selling here. I think what the judge acknowledged here is that there is a public interest in a speedy resolution.
Well, jury selection is now set to begin one day before Super Tuesday, when 15 states hold GOP primary elections.
This is a big trial, and it's happening in our backyard, but former President Trump's lawyers don't want it to.
No, our Jordan Fisher is here now with more on their efforts to get this trial out of D.C. And first up, Jordan, what is Trump's team arguing? Why do they want this out of D.C.?
Yeah, Lorenzo, we might have to wait a week or two to see their formal filing, but we can make an educated guess, and that's because dozens, if not hundreds, of January 6 defendants have already made these exact same arguments. They argue that the D.C. jury pool is inherently biased against them, that all the coverage of the January 6th committee, of the media coverage of the prosecutions has tainted the jury pool, essentially. And the Federal Public Defender's Office even commissioned a poll last year that found that potential jurors in the District of Columbia had negative impressions of individuals arrested in conjunction with January 6th. Now, Trump's team has floated the possibility of West Virginia as a better venue. It's worth noting that 70% of voters in that state last election gave their vote to Donald Trump.
Right.
Doesn't sound like the judge is really open to this. Obviously, prosecutors want it to stay right here. What are they saying about all of this?
Well, prosecutors have a couple of things working in their advantage. The first is that there are two clauses in the Constitution that say basically that trials and jury selection should happen in the jurisdiction where an alleged crime occurred. They can also point out that publicity of January 6th has been nationwide, if not international. They also have a binding precedent on their side from the Watergate trials going back to the 70s, in which the D.C. Circuit found that those defendants, which were tried right here in D.C., got a fair trial.
All right, so we know Judge Chutkan has been very clear about treating Trump like any other defendant. So do we know if she might grant his request at all, his team's request? And also, what happens next after this?
Going back to those Watergate trials, the practice of judges in this district have been to wait on ruling on those change of venue motions until after jury selection is complete. Partially that's because judges tend to think that the process, which is called voir dire, is sufficient to weed out any jurors who might have explicit or implicit bias. The other thing going in the prosecution's favor again is that judges have sat dozens of juries in January 6 cases. That includes high-profile conspiracy cases of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, and all prosecutors have to say is, we believe we can do that again.
All right, well, we'll be watching. But one thing is clear. She said this is not happening in 2026, for sure. All right, Jordan, thank you.